Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. I'm so happy to be here. I bet you all are as well because we are celebrating another Nashville victory today. Of course, I'm here with Valer Shabilla and Clay Trainum. It's a great weekend, wasn't it?
It's pretty good. Pretty cool.
Yeah, look, the vibes are completely different every time Nashville SC wins. Winning three in a row, I think Clay, you said it on the last show. What was it, like since September 2023 or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly?
It's
Um,
been a while. It's not just that they're winning, it's they scored multiple goals in three straight games, and that hadn't happened since 2023. And hadn't happened in league games since 2022. I mean, it took Hani winning MVP for that to happen. So, like, pretty crazy.
Steven, I understand you're in a hurry because you're trying to get to the airport as we're recording this. So tell us about your weekend because at any point I'm expecting you to leave this show.
Oh, no, I'm not in a hurry. Look, we got everything timed out. I'm ready to go. I had a really good weekend. I'm going to talk about your favorite topic here for a little bit. Michigan made the Sweet 16. Very nice. Good to see Michigan make the Sweet 16. So that was cool. Ended up going to a Washington Spirit game where it was really cold and windy, but the Spirit lost. So that was also fun to witness, I guess.
But at the
Um,
same time, Nashville SC won, so Steven's spirit was not broken.
Exactly. And I think the best part about it was after the match, wanted to go get a drink or something like that. I'm with a friend of the pod, Jerry, go into this brewery, and I will shout out Solace Brewing. And I'm like, man, there's no way that I can ask them to turn on Apple TV to turn on the Nashville SC match. Could I? I walk in and it's already on. Literally, the
Crazy.
Nashville SC versus Montreal match is on. It was the greatest. So I got to see the last two goals. It was incredible. Like, it could not have asked for a better weekend being able to watch the actual match.
For me, my weekend was fairly ordinary, I would say, but did try out a couple new places in town. I will not reveal their names because they don't pay us to do that. I did like one of them, so that was good. But otherwise, pretty soccer centric, and I did actually end up watching some college basketball. So I realized after listening to last episode, that I might have been a little too harsh on college basketball, which is pretty much my favorite college sport other than soccer, of course. So, I don't really watch college stuff, but yeah, college basketball pretty fun. All things considered,
The
McNeese, Aura Man himself, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm sure that you feel seen a little bit with the manager at McNeese, just a little bit. Uh, shout out to me. Actually, no shout out to McNeese because they were our rival when I was at Lamar. I actually did not watch a lot of college basketball, which is wild considering there's a college basketball jersey directly behind me as we record. But I did watch a lot of high school basketball because TSSAA state championships were going on. Got to see a couple fights, got to see a bunch of kids missing easy shots, got to see a bunch of kids missing layups, got to see a bunch of kids making shots they had no business making. So shout out to that. I worked that tournament every single year, so it was a good time with that. And I went to Cheekwood on Sunday,
Oh,
which
very
is
nice.
lovely. But I gotta say, it's a little bit weird going to Cheekwood, having been to like Kew Gardens in London. You walk in, and it's like this is a nice botanical garden, but like I
It's
think all botanical gardens have been ruined for
it,
me.
it's like going to random zoos and stuff like that with like going like to San Diego or something like that. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
this zoo is okay. This is nice. There's cool
I
things
went to
here.
a St. Louis zoo when I was a kid, and it like ruined zoos forever for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I look, I'm still trying to figure out what happened first. Nashville winning three in a row, or Valera admitting that he's wrong about something. I'm still trying to figure out what has happened first.
I wasn't wrong. I just said I overreacted. I still don't care.
All right, never mind. So this is still going. Got it. Fantastic. Um, I mean, look, this is weird. Like, it's not. I don't know how to do three shows in a row with a lot of positive takes and things going on. I don't know how to necessarily not get overexcited about this. What do you guys want to do? Do you want to rein people in, or do you want to fuel the fire?
So it's very funny because last week, literally right after we recorded this show, one of my coworkers, who's the season ticket holder for NSC, like cornered me and was like, give me a reason to not be excited about Nashville SC. It's like, I want you to give me a reason to rein it in. And I was like, all right, well, it's early days, and we got to see how things go. And they got a big win over an opponent that maybe they weren't favored to beat, but now they're going to play Montreal, and we know what happens when Nashville SC plays an opponent they're supposed to beat. And well, let's just rein it in. And then you go watch the Montreal game. Now the first half, not great. A lot of stuff going on in the first half, obviously with the lights and electricity, but like at the end of the day, you saw a dominant Nashville SC performance at home, playing the style that they have been playing, and doing so without some of the bigger players from the performance against Philadelphia, from some of the other performances earlier in the season. And not only that, you saw kind of Hani Mukhtar recapturing it a little bit as well. And so you started to see the vision, I guess. And we've seen it over the course of the month, but like it really has crystallized, I think, in the last few weeks. And so I don't know that I'm going to tell people to necessarily like fully rein it in. It's still early days. Like that still does apply, but it doesn't seem fluky. Like this does seem like a team that is prepared to have a pretty good season.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what's bringing people maybe a little bit back into Geodis Park. I think that's something that we talked about at the end of last season, where it became really hard for people to be excited to go to Geodis Park. Yes, the BJ Callahan hire brought people in. Yes, maybe some of the changes, like or maybe some of the transfers or some of the players were exciting to see. But at the end of the day, Nashville SC just weren't winning, and they weren't winning in style. Even the wins they had were kind of hit or miss even at times, and that drove a lot of people out. And maybe we're seeing some of those people come in. They still haven't sold out Geodis Park this season. Again, they haven't had that many chances, so I don't want to. This is not a problem necessarily, but I do think it speaks to that sort of Nashville mentality when it comes to sport of like, you have to be good. You have to be good to get those sorts of crowds and to get those sorts of vibes. And I saw videos from after the match of like fans in the concourse dancing and drums going off and all that. And I just don't remember the last time Nashville SC had something like that. It's been so long since that has happened. Now I know they've had it, obviously the Leagues Cup run was magical, all that, but like just in terms of fans going into a game, and you can feel it also in game. The fans were engaged. They knew that they trusted their team. And I think those wins are starting to build that trust again between the fans and the players themselves and the team in general. So I think that's just something that this franchise has missed in the last sort of months of Gary Smith into the beginning of BJ Callahan that we're starting to see now.
I mean, it's all confidence too, really. Like if you think about it, like when we saw the names that were not going to be part of the lineup, right? Like Ahmed Qasim is sick, obviously Schaffelberg's on international duty. You see these names not being out there. Now, in years past, if Nashville's missing a guy who had just scored 2 goals in 2 starts, a guy who's got a pretty good international reputation going away, I think we go into the park maybe hoping for a win, but expecting a draw or worse. And I saw the lineup and I was like, well, that's a bummer. But they should still win. And so like that's a real tone shift and a real tone change. And it speaks to how well they've been playing. It also, let's not forget here, also speaks to how poor Montreal is. That is not a good Montreal team.
I mean, their coach did get fired literally.
Yeah,
after
I don't think he deserved to get fired, but
no, not at all.
And I thought they actually did well in certain areas of the game. But I do want to ask about this since we're running against time. Steven, since you're from afar, I want your report from the social media reaction to this game, because you gave us a really good report last episode. How was the social media this time? Were there enough memes for you?
I gave a good report last time
on social media. Yeah, you said there were more people like clowning people on socials. And
that's fair. No, I think
drunk at a bar, Blair.
Yeah, that's fair. I think what I was really excited about, and obviously we'll talk about it in the third segment, is it made people ready to go for Cincinnati. Like people were not holding back from already getting ready for Cincinnati ahead of time, which is like, that's great to see. Like people should be getting excited for rivalries, not some self-pity of, oh no, it's not going to happen. So I'm excited for it. We have a big show, so this segment's going to be a little bit shorter. We have a very big show. We have a very special guest that is going to be coming up next. And of course, we have some other things to talk about, including some pro-rel information to provide you guys. We're going to do the interview, though, next, right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Pharmaceutical Soccer, Nashville's longest-running soccer show and part of the 615 Soccer family. Valer Shabila here, joined by Clay Trainum. Steven had to leave us for a little bit, but we are joined by a special guest this segment, someone who's near and dear to a lot of Nashvillians' hearts, Nashville's first MLS captain. You might remember him from a banger against Miami and leaving Matweed in the dust. You might also remember him from unknowingly starting a full-team brawl in the first half against NYCFC. He's also an Olympian and one of the greatest MLS players of all time. I can go on and on, but I'll stop. Most recently, he's the face of MLS Season Pass and DeMoine Menace's engine room. Dax McCarty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction. I appreciate about 95% of it, but the NYC brawl, I take umbrance with that. That was handled very poorly by the referee in that situation. And for my first ever red card, I have to say I'm still a little bitter about it. Those plays, 99% of the time, it's a yellow card for both players and a move on. There were no punches thrown. Still a ridiculous decision, but I digress, guys. I'm over it. I'm older now. I'm more calm. But anyways,
I watched it this morning because I wanted to put it on this rundown, and I watched it this morning. And you're right, first and foremost. I do agree with your assessment, but that's why I added the words unknowingly, because I don't think you knew you were starting abroad. I thought you were just kind of trying to play the game. But
that was absurd. That was absurd by NYCFC. But Maxi, that was maybe the shortest fight in professional sports history between me and Maxi Morales right there.
I will let you know that this was someone I know very closely. This was their first NSC game, that game. And they said that the reason they became a season ticket holder was because of that fight. So I'm not.
Well, at least one positive thing came out of it. There you go.
I will say this though, you're a guy that knows MLS rivalries. Obviously, you're a guy that's played on both sides of multiple MLS rivalries, which is interesting. If you're gonna get a red card, at least it's a red card against NYCFC. All the choices.
That's a good way to look at it for sure. I always had a little built-in extra juice for them, for sure. No question about it.
So, Dax, thank you so much for joining us first and foremost. Obviously, you're a Nashville legend. I think everybody who kind of cares about this team or has watched this team, if there was a Mount Rushmore type of thing, I think your face will be on it. And I think one of the, maybe it didn't end in the best way possible or in the way that a lot of people anticipated, but and we'll talk about Nashville more kind of going forward. But so far for now, how are you enjoying this Apple gig? How are you enjoying this being media?
Yeah, Valer, thank you. I appreciate that. Right off the top, Nashville fans have to know how special my time there was. 4 great years. I think it surpassed all my expectations. Anytime you build a club from scratch, you want to have success out of the gate. And, I think we did that. I think we laid a really good foundation, and I think it all culminated there right at the end with the 2023 Leagues Cup, and being so close to winning the first trophy for the club was a bitter pill to swallow, not being able to win that penalty shootout. But nonetheless, a fantastic time that I had in Nashville. As far as the transition, it's been brilliant. I can't say enough good things about it. And, I went back and forth on, do I want to coach or do I want to go into the media stuff? One thing I knew for sure was that I wanted to stay involved in the game. I love the game. It's all I know, really. And I've been, doing it my whole life, been a part of MLS for 19 years. So there was just kind of a natural progression especially with how great I feel like the Apple coverage has been. When those conversations started kind of whirling around, it just kind of was a no-brainer for me. And so I feel really comfortable. I'm really grateful to be able to step into a role that I'm loving, honestly, with working with people that I know and people that I respect, and people that I think are really high-level, high-character individuals, but also great analysts. And so that's my dream. You know, my goal as a player was always to hold myself to the highest level of accountability, and now I'm trying to do the same as an analyst, and so it's been really fun.
One thing we ask on this show every episode is how was your weekend, and I am curious to hear about your weekend, of course, but I'm mainly curious to hear about what does the travel look like? How do you make it all work?
Yeah.
I know you don't. I don't think you live in near the studio.
Nope.
So how is that experience?
Yeah, it's been it's been an adjustment, but it's also something that I think I'm used to. You know, you travel in preseason when you're playing, right? And so I took that travel away, which was awesome to not have to worry about a preseason, which is a disaster in every sense of the word. I couldn't stand traveling for preseason, but now, you know, instead of traveling 17 weekends, you know, you add on those extra 17. So you're traveling, you know, for the 34 weekends, and then um, you just kind of you roll with it. You know, my week, my day-to-day stuff during the week is a lot lighter. I get to spend a lot of time with my family. I get to spend a lot of time with my kids. I get to drop them off at school. I get to pick them up. I get to take them to all their activities. And we get to spend a lot of quality time together. And then on the flip side of all that quality time is the weekend, where you make your sacrifice to travel up to the studio in Connecticut and go to work. You know, that was what I dreamed to do. And so those are the commitments and sacrifices you have to make. I always look at everything as a little bit of a give and a take, you know, and um, I'm very lucky and grateful to have a supporting cast around me that I think is, you know, the best. My wife, some people here in Atlanta that are helping us out, and you know, all of that, I guess, supporting cast around you makes me be able to be more comfortable to go and try to do the best job I possibly can on the weekend. So the travel it's just comes with the gig, man. It's part of the job.
And when you add into that travel, maybe some occasional trips with the Des Moines Menace,
Yeah,
that probably disrupts things a little bit.
sure
Now,
does.
I'm the resident Open Cup nerd on this show, although Valera is catching up to me quite quickly. Uh, First off, now Des Moines did this a little bit with Sasha last year.
Yep.
At what point did it become like a Red Bulls slash 2010s MLS All Star
Yeah.
situation for you guys?
I was talking to the guys, said, man, if this team was put together in 2012, we would probably be MLS Cup favorites. But right now, we're just a bunch of old guys running around the field trying not to pull a muscle. Sasha had a great time last year doing it. And to be honest, I think it created a little bit of buzz. Maybe you guys, you know, Clay, you can probably speak to it more so than myself, but I saw all the stuff online. I tried to watch his game a little bit on YouTube and see him running around out there with a bunch of youngsters. So yeah, Sash, he wanted to run it back this year with his good friend Benny Feilhaber. Benny obviously is in between jobs right now, and so you know they wanted to put their heads together and see if they could recruit some more experience. I'll try to be nice to us instead of saying old guys. I'll say some experience. And so we're in the studio one day, and you know Sash is just kind of picking our brains. Hey, would you guys consider this? Like, would you guys want to do it? Come on, like let's bring the glory days back. Like Dax, you just retired. You know you should be able to play 90, right? And I was laughing at him. I'm like, dude. I haven't played a competitive game in 4 months, and my Ben and Jerry's intake has gone up significantly. You know, like give me a break here, man. But it all kind of worked out. I said I would play if you got Bradley Wright Phillips to commit, and you know once we pulled Brad's ear along to do it, it just all the pieces kind of fell in place. The Des Moines Menace are a historic club, and look, we just wanted to bring more attention and more eyeballs to a great tournament. I love the Open Cup. I never won it, and that was a huge disappointment in my career because I feel like it's such a great tournament and it's such a great historical. You know, it has such great historical significance in this country. So I felt like we created a pretty good buzz around the game, and we're just trying to have fun and see how far we can take it.
Now, I I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but it's around 8 or 9. You are either the eighth or ninth player that's played for both NSC and the Des Moines Menace now.
Wow.
Now, usually it's the other way around. Like Kosuke played for the Menace.
I did know
But-
I got a text from Chris Redditch. He did tell me that him and Matt LaGrassa both played for the Des Moines Menace, and so I know
Yeah.
two of them right there.
Kosuke did, I believe, as well.
Okay.
And then there were a lot of guys in the USL team that played for the Menace when they were in college. those first
Okay.
couple of years. Yeah, I'm a nerd about this thing. Like I said, the Menace played down here at MTSU a couple of years ago, and the president of the Menace at the time was James Cannon, who was vice president for NSC. So there's like these weird ties all over the place for whatever reason. Uh, but the real question I have for you is that, there's a bar here around campus, and if you go to that bar, all you hear is people talking about what they did in like 1995 when they were playing for their high school team and all this stuff. When you guys get around each other around the Menace, how long does it take before Benny brings up his goal against Mexico?
I think someone else brought it up. Funny enough,
Okay.
I don't think Benny brought it up. I think someone else brought it up. But yeah, look, that's a legendary goal in any sense of the word. I mean, if you look throughout U.S. soccer history, man, I'm struggling to come up with two or three that are more iconic. Obviously, you have Langdon's goal in the World Cup, which is certainly iconic. Maybe the first goal ever that qualified for the U.S. for a World Cup, and then probably Benny's. I mean, geez, that's such an iconic goal, man. And look, it's a bunch of iconic players. I feel really lucky to have been invited to do it, and just the fact that, like, I work, not right next to Ozzy Alonso because he's in the Spanish studio, but the fact that, like, we had so many good battles against each other, and I admired him as a player so much, and I always thought it would be fun to play with a guy as great as him, to be able to then, play with him for at least one game in the Open Cup was amazing. Me and Sash played together. Me and Brad played together, and I loved our time together, but I never played with Benny other than with the national team. And so you have all these different layers, and you have all these different connections. And I think it's just a really fun way to kind of rekindle that flame and that love and that passion for the game. And look, it was miserable. The conditions were awful. I don't know if you guys watched the game.
I did. I did.
Well, someone asked me, like, man, you got to go back and watch it back and see how you guys can improve. I said, I would rather drip acid into my eyeballs slowly than go back and watch that game, because there was zero quality coming from the old guys, none whatsoever. And then you add into the elements. It was so hard to play, and the Sporting Kansas City 2 kids just pressed the life out of us. It was very, very much a memory that I'm going to have to go to therapy to try to forget. But look, survive in advance. That's what we did, man. So we have this game coming up here April 2nd at home against Union Omaha, who actually knocked us out last year. Look at me talking like a company man. Us knocked us out last year. Just I try to retire, and then it just sucks me right back in.
Well, if you're looking to be in the best shape, do not go to the Drake Diner while you're up there, because that'll break you down pretty quick.
I'll keep that I'll keep that in mind.
Post game, hit it up. It's good food.
Okay.
Putting you on the spot here. In a magical world, you get to pick any NSC player to be part of that game against Union Omaha. One player. Give me one player. Who is it?
Okay.
Current Nashville SC players.
Oh, I was gonna say current or former, right? Because I would have told you, man, Bradley Wright Phillips and CJ Sapong up top could have been pretty special, especially because I think CJ's available. Current NSC player. Oh man, that is a tough question, right? You got so many good ones. Honestly, guys, I've got to go with my guy Alex Mouil. He's just Alex, like. This is the guy you want on your team in the toughest games. He's a very good soccer player. He's very versatile, but he is a grinder. Like those games, like Gary Smith used to always say, we need to have graft. We need to have graft in our team in order to be successful. Alex Mouil, if you graded him on a 1 to 10 scale of graft, his would be at like 35. So you need guys like that who can add quality. Look, Alex's goal he scored this past weekend, what a great finish. Like, you need guys like that, but also guys that can run for days. Like, that's what we need as old guys. We need legs. So Alex Mouil is like my ideal player to come play with us.
Real quick, because I'm just curious, because obviously people know about, what was the reaction when you guys in the locker room saw the Soulja Boy video with Timothy Chalamet and Alex Mouil?
I was crying laughing. I hadn't laughed that hard in a very long time, because it was just so surreal to see Alex dancing like that. It was incredible. But yeah, we had a good laugh about that. Actually, the only time I laughed harder recently was when I watched our video back, the highlights that MLS production team put together of us in the Open Cup. I was very, very embarrassed, but also very happy they put that together because the whole world needed to see just the little bits and pieces of it, of how bad we were. So that was great.
Honestly, Dax, the fact that you answered Alex Muyl to that question is the reason I was really hoping you would be able to make this show. Because of this show, this show is like the Alex Muyl of MLS shows. You
I
know, that's
love it.
why
I love it.
we work hard. 260
Indispensable.
episodes.
Indispensable. That's what you are.
Valer is very big on the Muyl train. He thinks Muyl going to be second on the team in goals and assists this year. So
wow,
I
that
made a
is
bold
bold.
prediction.
I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, honestly, doesn't look like the worst shot in the world right now.
No,
Alex is playing well.
At the end of last season, I thought BJ Callahan really depended on him in a lot of these sort of really big moments. And 5 games, 5 starts. I mean, I don't know, just volume wise, he's doing what he needs. But Dax, I want to take you back a little bit and talk about your time in Nashville, and then we'll talk about Nashville currently as well.
Sure.
But first and foremost, I mean, Nashville as an expansion club, you said it yourself. You came in not really knowing much. What is this going to look like? What is it going to be? In your time in Nashville, you had so many sort of responsibilities that maybe you wouldn't have if this wasn't an expansion club, right? How did you feel those responsibilities were as the captain of the club, the first captain of the club? And like, did you enjoy doing that? And also, do you feel like you've made you left your mark by the time you left?
Well, I hope I left my mark. I think I did leave a mark, honestly, and I don't say this lightly, but the off-field stuff is almost as important as the on-field stuff when it comes to building a team. So you talk about words like culture and identity, and sometimes they can be used really casually and laissez-faire, as if it's like, okay, we all need that, we all talk about it, right? But you actually really need that with an expansion team, like with a club that's just coming into MLS for the first time, with a bunch of players that don't know each other. So I give a lot of credit to Gary Smith. He put a lot of faith and trust in me to make me his first captain. And then, of course, you just kind of rely on your experiences and your instincts. And the one thing that I always leaned on and tried to lean on was I need to try to earn the respect of my teammates in the locker room before I then could make my voice louder and before I could start to hold people more accountable, because I've got to look at myself first, right? And I've tried to always be like that, and I haven't always been successful. I've failed in certain moments in my career doing that at a high level, but I think as I got older and as I started to understand the team dynamics more, I think I got better at it. And so we just needed to lay a foundation. It's not easy to build an expansion team. You're at a disadvantage pretty much right away. And so you just try to preach what the coach wants from his tactics in terms of on-field stuff, but then you try to set up a great culture within the group off the field. And so I think I helped do that, along with guys like Dan Lovitz, guys like Eric Miller, Walker Zimmerman, Joe Willis, even Hani, right? Hani was new, but he helped in that regard massively. And so that was a really important step, I think, in Nashville's evolution. I think just trying to win games in early in the year, and then you guys remember how it was. COVID year, it was just crazy. You couldn't cook up a worse expansion season for a team. And so we had a lot of obstacles to deal with, and I felt like we dealt with them all pretty well. So I hope that my presence was appreciated, and it still lives on to this day. I have a great relationship with a lot of guys still in that locker room. And so, I tell Jacob Schaffelberg all the time, I love you. I hope you play great, but if you play like crap, I'm going to have to crush you, buddy. And that's how it's going to have to be. So I really do appreciate all those guys in that locker room. And I do still support Nashville SC.
That's awesome to hear. And I think a lot of those guys, kind of talking to them honestly, whether it's post-game press conferences or just conversations, they always mention you in high regards. And I think I think this is something beyond just the public image and the public sort of knowledge.
That's great. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I do want to ask, because you were kind of in the trenches and playing those games in the COVID years, and then moving on and building this new franchise, one thing we always talk about is the progression of the fan base. And I don't mean to like insult anybody's knowledge, but
Sure.
there is a knowledge element that you need to build up for a new club, and just in America in general when it comes to soccer. A lot of us grew up with the game who came to this country maybe a little bit later, but a lot of folks didn't grow up with the game. And like one thing I always mention is that like it was so interesting to go from like, wow, this guy kicked the ball really high, let's clap, type of thing, to
Yeah.
like, oh, here's like a switch in play, and now there's an applause before the switch in play.
Yeah.
That's just one example, but like, did you guys on the field notice that progression for the fans year to year?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fair point and a fair statement, especially when you bring soccer to a place like Nashville, where it didn't seem like there was a big appetite for it. But wow, the supporters blew me away right from the get go. At Nissan Stadium, it's a big stadium. It's a little cavernous in terms of how big it can be, and anytime you have a football stadium and you don't fill it out, it can almost feel like a disadvantage. But the fans made it a home field advantage for us at Nissan Stadium. I mean, I just felt so comfortable there right from the beginning. They were loud. They always filled the lower bowl. They were excited. We didn't. I have to say, we didn't always give them a reason to be excited, but they were always supportive, especially when we were playing at our best and when we were playing really good soccer. I think back to Nissan Stadium and then moving into Geodis Park, and I'll never forget leading the team out of Nissan Stadium for our first ever game against Atlanta United, still getting chills down my spine thinking about the crowd and the noise, and a moment for me that just is such a pertinent moment in my career, one that I'll never forget. And then I was lucky enough to have another moment like that, leading the team out for the first game at Geodis Park against the Union, where I then get chills down my spine again. And it just, the supporters, they seem to just get better and better each year. Right. And it was, those first 4 years were pretty good years. I mean, obviously we didn't have a ton of really high highs, but I feel like we set a really good floor of what people could expect. And, we were really fun to watch at times, but the fans, they got better every season. Now, I have to say, I think last year was a tough year for everyone. It was a tough year for attendance. It was a tough year for Geodis. It was a tough year for the team. And so when a team's not as successful, it seems like the ebbs and flows kind of go with it with supporters. And that's how supporters make their voice known, is if the team's not doing well, you show them with not going to games. And so I do feel like that suffered a little bit last year. And now from what I've seen this year, it seems like it's back on the upswing again. And it seems like people are excited. It seems like people are invested. It seems like the team has given people reason to believe again. And that is awesome to see.
How much are you looking forward to the first time that you can return to Geodis, like as just a fan or a media member, just not a player?
I'm looking forward to it a great deal, and it's funny you say that as a fan or as a media member. I'm doing the studio stuff now, and I love the studio stuff. I think it is brilliant. I think it suits my personality well. But I have a small itch to do some color commentating on some games. And we'll see what happens in the summer in terms of the schedule and if I'm going to be able to do that. But if I were able to return to Nashville for the first time and maybe like call my first game there as a color commentator, I feel like that would just be really poetic, because I was lucky enough to be able to call a game with Jamie Watson and Tony Husband up in the booth with them away at New England. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I enjoyed it. They made my day so easy, and I really loved it. I felt really comfortable. And then Jamie got sick and I was either suspended or injured against CF Montreal, and I was in the studio. I was doing the studio show. I did the pregame show. I did the halftime postgame, and we won. And I think Walker Zimmerman scored the game winner on a header, and it was just hilarious. Having him on the headset and me going in his ear, being like, "Hey Walker, Dax here, your teammate, and doing my first kind of interview with him as a member of the media, but I was still playing. Just there's so many different little connections there that I feel like it would be really poetic if I had the chance to do that. So you never know what the future holds. I still, like I said at the top of the show, I hold Nashville very near and dear to my heart. And those supporters and those fans, they always made us feel, my family and I feel really welcome. So I think that would be special.
We're gonna, I guess, move over to current Nashville here in a few minutes, but I do have a question for you that's not super important, but I am curious about it. Obviously, you played for Gary Smith, and now in a nearly empty stadium in 2010, you met Gary Smith against the Colorado Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
Did he bring that up immediately, or did he wait?
We had coffee for the first time when I first got to Nashville. I think it was during like maybe the expansion draft party. I think that was my they announced my signing and the trade, and then I got there for the expansion draft party, and Gary and I had coffee, and we got it out of the way right away. I don't even know if it was him bringing it up or if it was me bringing it up, but it was kind of just like, listen, man, we've got this like this elephant in the room. Let's just address it. Let's put all our cards on the table early. I'm still hurting from it because I felt like I would be back to MLS Cup a bunch of times, and that was my only appearance. And so that game was, again, another miserable game weather-wise. That was actually, funny enough, the last MLS Cup ever played at a neutral stadium, which it's very fitting for that to happen because it was
I
miserable.
imagine I was one of the 10 or 11 people in Nashville watching that game live. So
it was misery. But it was, I'm happy for Gary because Gary's such a good person. I don't know if you guys, obviously people see him as a coach and they judge him one way or another, tactically, results, whatever. The life of a coach is a difficult one, but as a person, Gary's a great person. He's a really good guy. And so obviously it was at the expense of me lifting an MLS Cup, which sucks, but the fact that a good guy like him and Steve Guppy were able to accomplish that and get to the top of the mountain, that's something that I'm very happy for them. And so we got it out of the way early. No awkwardness the rest of the year.
And I do want to ask Dax about the tactics that Gary generally has, which are a little more risk
averse.
There.
Yeah,
thank you.
Risk averse.
Dax, if you didn't know, English is my third language, so sometimes
no problem, man. You're doing great.
No, but there's a lot of sort of negative way of looking at that specifically, and there's also the glass half full part, which is like, hey, Nashville made the playoffs under Gary every year. Nashville went to made some progress in the playoffs and made a cup final under Gary. So I think there's two ways of looking at it, but I'm just curious from a player perspective, how important is the style of play? Whether you're choosing your destination or you're already there, I mean, how important is that?
Yeah, I think it's important, but I think certain players, I do believe that style of play is more important for certain players, and it's not as important for other players. I always considered myself the type of player that would be able to fit into any manager's tactical preference or style. I always felt like I could adapt. I always felt like it didn't matter. If you want to sit back and counter, no problem. If you want to play high-pressing soccer, no problem. I did that with the Red Bulls. If you want to play possession soccer, I did that with FC Dallas, a little bit with Chicago Fire. When we first started under Veljko Paunovic, we were a very possession-heavy team, build out of the back. I mean, I considered myself adaptable. And I think especially the modern footballer, the modern soccer player has to be adaptable. There aren't a ton of players who are just specialists anymore. The old school number 10 maybe is still a specialist. The fox in the box type of striker is maybe a specialist, but every other player, you've got to be adaptable. You've got to be able to play in different formations and different styles, because if you can't, your ability to win games, I think, is hindered. And so it's certainly a consideration. And I knew going to Nashville, I knew Gary was a defensive minded coach. But I think the club was smart to build their first few teams that way, because listen, it's low risk, but it's high floor, low ceiling, and you never, I think there are some expansion clubs who built a certain way and they got embarrassed, and that's just a fact. And we didn't want to be that club. And then there are other clubs who built in a totally different way and spent in a ton of money and built with much different profile of player. And they had a lot of success right out of the gate. You look at the Seattles and the LAFCs and even the Chicago Fire, if you want to go way back in the day. Right. But I think Nashville was, we were never going to be that club right from the beginning. I think that was clear and that was obvious to see. But with the resources that we had available to us, I feel like we built a strong team. I feel like we built a team that was set up to succeed, and we got close. We got really close. And that was something that, I'll look back on and always say, a lot of people will be like, well, it's Messi's first trophy with Inter Miami. It's historic. And I always look back and think, oh, but it could have been our first, trophy in history with Nashville SC. And that would have been just as historic. It wouldn't have been as big of a storyline. But I think for that group of players that we had, we were an older team, right? We had a lot of veteran guys who the writing was on the wall that, we weren't going to be the core of the team that much longer. That would have been a really special kind of bow on top of the first couple of years in Nashville. So but credit to Gary, man. Gary was a good coach, and I do hope he lands on his feet somewhere soon.
Now, obviously, Nashville goes through a huge change. They decide on the change, kind of halfway through last season, but and we don't really see BJ Callahan or Nashville SC take shape last season. I mean, we saw glimpses here and there.
Yeah.
And obviously you were playing, so maybe you didn't see as much. You didn't play against them. You lost and against Nashville SC, which is like an awkward thing, I feel like, because all the guys, it's the same guys, but it's not the same coach. But I remember interviewing you after that match in Atlanta, and I felt a little bad because you were watching the Special Olympics game, and I was like, I need to get this interview. But you had a really good sort of good outlook on what Nashville were trying to build and where they're going from there. And you kind of, I wouldn't say you knew exactly where they were, but I think you saw from that time that there are some building blocks being put in.
Yeah.
So what they're calling it here in market is Nashville SC 2.0. That's kind of the word that's being thrown around. Uniquely Nashville has been thrown around as well. There's just all these sort of different monikers maybe to describe it. But from kind of an outsider perspective in what you've been seeing in the studio, what are your first impressions of this new Nashville?
Yeah, very positive first impressions. Obviously, BJ Callahan, he comes from the, let's call it a hybrid tree. Let's call it the Greg Berhalter, Jim Curtin tree, right? And so, I think he took his influences from both of those guys. He had success when he was interim coach with the men's national team, winning a Nations League, which was very impressive. And as we've seen recently, not as easy to do as maybe everyone thought. But that's a conversation for another day, guys. And so I've been really impressed with Nashville this year and what they're trying to accomplish. I would look at Nashville as almost maybe a Philadelphia Union under Jim Curtin reincarnated, and they play like a different system. So what I mean by that is that under Jim, he kind of made Philly famous for the diamond, right? He played in the 4-4-2 diamond, and they were going to press high up the field, and they weren't going to make things beautiful, and it wasn't going to be this tiki-taka style. It was going to be very direct, very narrow, and they were going to be great in transition. I see a lot of similarities with Nashville SC. The way that they play, the way their midfield sets up is different, but it's not so different, right? Instead of having one single pivot, you have two pivots who sit deep and they kind of try to orchestrate the game. But then they have, they play with two, let's call it number 10s who are very narrow. They don't necessarily play with wingers. They keep the game very narrow. The connections are very short. There's more short passing, and I think this is where BJ takes more influence maybe from Greg. Maybe more of the possession type stuff that I'm seeing from Nashville SC comes from the Greg Berhalter tree and what Greg's principles were. And so I look at it, if Jim Curtin's style and Greg Berhalter's style had a baby, they would be BJ Callahan's style, and that's what he's building with Nashville SC. So I'm very impressed. I think that it's a way to succeed in Major League Soccer, especially if you can get your back line to get back to their best, which is not conceding goals. I think Nashville is creating a lot more chances. I think that their midfield is really strong, and they have a lot of really fun, exciting pieces in midfield. And it just looks like BJ is getting a lot out of players who maybe stagnated a little bit last year. BJ's starting to get more out of them. And so I've been really impressed, especially with Nashville going to Philly, beating them, being the first team to beat them, and then coming home and beating a CF Montreal team that they should have beat, which you guys know as well as I do that Nashville SC, we tended to play up or down to the level of our competition. You know, beating a team like Montreal, who you should beat, it wasn't always a given in that moment. So BJ, he's put a lot more confidence in these players to go and take more risks, and I think that's really exciting for the players and for the fans.
So we were joking last week is like Philly, Montreal, Cincinnati is like, all right, I expect Nashville to do well against Philly and Cincinnati, but Montreal, who knows?
Yeah.
And that's something that dates back to Toronto. But one of the things, and I appreciated watching MLS 360 over the weekend, you were waving the Nashville flag a little bit when maybe some of the folks weren't as high
haters.
on Nashville.
They're haters.
But one of the things that sticks out to me, and you've been in this league for a long time, so you would kind of understand this. We've seen teams that change over their philosophy, change over their coaching staff. How many times have you seen it work effectively while not changing any of the designated players? Which I think is like an interesting wrinkle that BJ's been able to find a way for this to work effectively, at least so far, knock on wood, where the three highest paid guys on the team are still the main guys.
Yeah, that doesn't happen often. It's a really good point. It's one that I hadn't thought of a ton up until you just asked that question. Whenever you have a new coach come in, they always want to put their imprint on the team and their stamp on the team. And I feel like bringing in BJ Callahan in the middle of last year was really beneficial for him to be able to assess Hani Mukhtar, Sam Surridge, and Walker Zimmerman. And listen, they were all three still under contract. And so he didn't have a ton of flexibility if he did want to get rid of one of them. But I felt like last year was a really good runway for him to kind of assess them and see, how can I get the most out of them? Because all three of them are very good players in their own right. They're all elite at their positions in MLS in their own right. And so it's a really interesting point, Clay, one that I didn't think of, and one that I don't think it happens too often when you get a new coach coming into a team and he can say, hey, I want to take these three designated players who aren't my players, but I'm going to be able to use them and use them effectively. If you look at, Hani Mukhtar, traditionally, I think everyone thought he was a number 10 when he first came into the league. And the truth of the matter is I could start to tell pretty quickly that Hani was a little bit more comfortable as like a striker, like a second striker. He was more of a finisher in the box, a guy who could be just a great goal scorer, right? And listen, he has creativity, but I think he prefers to finish off plays rather than create them. And so you take a Hani Mukhtar, you give him more of a role to be up top, be closer to Sam Surridge, who's a fox in the box, goal scoring type, right? And then, with Walker, what you have with Walker. You have an elite center back. And so it's a really interesting it's a really interesting nugget, Clay, right there, and one I didn't think of. But look, I think it's a credit to those players who I don't think any of them, I think all three of them would tell you they probably were disappointed in the year they had last year. And so now all three of them look fit, sharp. It's great to see Walker healthy. I think Hani still has another level he can get to. I would love to see the Hani, the MVP level Hani that we saw in 2021, 2022, and he's still young. Hani's 30, right? Like he can get back to that form, and if he gets back to that form, Nashville, their ceiling goes up significantly.
Yeah,
at 30, you hadn't even made it to Nashville yet, so
exactly.
The other thing that kind of we've seen from this Nashville team that is the depth that seems to be this next man up mentality that really is showcasing in this first 5 games at least. We've seen guys like Whitemeyer and Corcoran and even Perez come in and contribute and play a part. These are guys that maybe wouldn't have gotten as much minutes in the past, or even if they've gotten maybe 10, 15 minutes, they wouldn't have had enough time to impress necessarily. So having that sort of mentality of like, I'm going to step up. And so we were just talking about Josh Bauer no, we will be talking about Josh Bauer in the third segment that we already recorded, but don't tell people that. But he comes in and plays a position that, he's not naturally a right back, plays really well and even gets a goal. So there's this sort of really good system and sort of machine of turning players. But you were talking about the floor and ceiling, and I'm so curious because now Nashville's floor and ceiling both changed dramatically with BJ Callahan, with this sort of new philosophy coming in. But from a player perspective, from somebody who knows the game really well, what can Nashville do to make sure that this run is sustainable? And I don't mean they win every single game, of course, but what can they do to kind of materialize these good performances game in, game out?
Yeah, well, you have to take advantage of your home games. I think you guys would agree with me that Nashville hasn't been near consistent enough at home. Geodis Park, we started calling it the Castle really early on in its existence. Shout out to Anibal Godoy for that nickname. I mean, and I guess a reference to the castle would be almost like a fortress, and it needs to be a fortress. And so I think that got lost a little bit. For some reason, there was not a lot of winning happening at Geodis Park, for one reason or another, and that hinders you. That hinders your ability as a club to collect points and to finish as high as possible in the playoff seeding. So they have to win their home games. I think that's something that is pretty obvious right now, is that their home form has to improve and has to get better. But you touched on it a little bit, and I think that depth is so valuable in MLS. And I wanted to touch on the depth because there are a lot of coaches and a lot of teams that when they are missing pieces and important pieces, they have to change up how they play, whether that be the formation, whether that be the tactics. And the best coaches, they don't have to do that because they trust the depth of their team and they trust the players that they are going to insert in for, the regular starters who might not be available for one reason or another. Let's look at Wilfried Nancy over in Columbus. Why do you think Columbus has sustained success pretty much for the last couple of years under Wilfried Nancy? Because he doesn't change. He's missing 5, 6, 7 players. He does not change because he trusts his system. He trusts how he trains his players to be able to step up and to be able to play well when they need to. And so if he's missing a center back, he doesn't go to 4 in the back. He stays with 3 in the back, and he wants that continuity between his team. I see this with Nashville, and I see this with BJ Callahan because you're missing players. You have a Yazbek who's out. You have a Gaston Brugman who starts the season injured. You have a Kasim who's come into the team and looked really sharp and really dangerous, who is out, right, for international duty. And look, this team, I think there's a real excitement around the younger pieces and around the pieces that they've brought in, right? Especially in midfield with an Eddie Tagseth. Yazbek is getting his feet a little bit more comfortable in this team. You have the MLS Cup MVP from last year and Gaston Brugman, who seemingly still has to get sharper. And then you have Kasim, who's come in, and I've been really impressed with him in terms of his ability to be dynamic. He adds a little bit something different. He's more creative. And then you balance that out with the legs and the running of an Eddie Tagseth and an Alex Muil. It just seems like the midfield of this Nashville SC team went from a little bit of a problem, a little bit of an anchor in terms of age, in terms of ball progression. And now, you've totally flipped it and made midfield more of a strength. And you still add on top of that with a really solid back line. This is a Nashville SC team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. And we talk about floors and ceilings. And for me, the ceiling for this team, if it all clicks, is a top 4 finish in the East. And that's saying a lot considering where they came from last year. And, I think a lot is going to have to go their way in order for that to happen. I think Walker Zimmerman has to stay healthy. Knock on wood. He's looked fit and sharp. He started the season very well, but he's a very key piece, right? And if you lose a piece like Surridge or Mukhtar, it seems like in the past losing Hani would be like a death blow. But I think now with the depth that they've built, I don't think it would be as difficult, to replace him. And so, look, this Nashville team is exciting. I think they need to keep building. And I'll be curious to see when the summer months roll around if they can keep sustaining this high level of play. I think they can do it.
Yep. I thought Clay had something, but no, I think I mean we've been kind of seeing it in market, and I think I even went to the training during preseason. They did like an open week where we get to see the media got to see and go see the training, and I kind of saw that there was something different about this team. And then now 5 games in, I think everybody within the Nashville market or who has watched Nashville can see that progression, can see that they're a different team. I think it's going to take a while for the league to catch up to that. Nashville built a reputation for 5 years of being a certain type of team,
Yep.
and then had 1 year that they were not even good with that sort of situation. And now it's just going to take time to build this. And then I think you're right. Maybe some people are sleeping on them, but at the same time, Nashville are going to need to earn those storylines. They're going to need to earn that. And I think everybody within the club kind of understands that, because every time I talk to BJ Callahan or any of the players, they're not satisfied with 2-3 wins.
That's great.
They know they haven't accomplished anything.
That's a great mentality to have. Yeah, I think that you have a really nice mix of youth and experience now in this Nashville team. Seems to be a good buzz around them. Hopefully they don't make me look like an idiot.
Now, Dax, we have gone way over time, and you've been very generous with your time. So I will wrap up with this, and then I promise you I'll let you go and take care of your children who are at home. But I've watched you play so many times with Nashville and not with Nashville. But little known fact, you've watched me play soccer once in your life that I know of. So I'm wondering if you remember what that is.
I don't. I mean, high school maybe. I don't know. I don't remember.
I love that.
Definitely not high school.
Okay, I was gonna say you might be younger than me. You're probably significantly younger than me.
So you mentioned Chris Redditch, who
were you at his field? Were you at his field? Okay,
yes.
Okay. Now it rings a bell.
Yes. So me and another.
Okay, I got it now. I remember now.
Steven, who also hosts the show.
Yeah.
He was there. And it's I don't think I put in my best performance.
Okay, maybe that's why I didn't remember you.
Yeah, maybe that's why. We were also all wearing masks, I'm pretty sure. I mean, this was like pure COVID.
Right.
Or maybe you were wearing a mask. I don't know. But I just remember, this is 5 years ago. I just remember, he was like, oh, I have a friend stopping by. And we were just kind of like using his field because we wanted to play some soccer. And captain of this Nashville team that I make a podcast about shows up, and I'm like, well, hang on.
That's great.
Just do that to me.
That's awesome. Sorry, I hope I didn't make you nervous, but shout out Chris Redditch. What a legend.
Yes, absolutely.
It turns out the reason Valera didn't play well is because you were there. I mean, normally he is like Iraqi Pirlo, and then you just showed up.
I love it. Valera, I'm gonna need to see some highlights on YouTube when I'm not there.
If we ever do the media game, first of all, you're in my team, even because you're media now. It's like, I will fly you out to play on my team. I'm very much willing to do that. I'll buy the company.
Sign me up, man.
Dax, thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome. We love talking with you, and honestly, like, you have been one of the most important figures for Nashville SC. I truly mean that, both on and off the pitch. I think you've provided this organization and this market with something that a lot of people hold dearly, and I think you've definitely left your mark on this market, and we're just so thankful that you were able to join us for precisely almost an hour, even though I told you it was 20-minute interview.
No problem, man. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me, and anytime you need anyone to hop on and talk shop, give me a call.
Thanks, Dax. Appreciate it.
Cheers, guys.
And we are back right here at Pharma Soccer, of course, at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You should also check out 615soccer.com. A lot of cool content and everything going on there. Thank you, Dax, so much for the interview, joining us. We truly did appreciate it. It was a really good time to talk to you. I'm sure Valera and Clay had an absolute blast being a part of it and talking so much about me. So
long as you leave NSC, we can get you on the show, man.
But anyways, look, of course, like, we have Dax, we have a really busy episode. So we have some mailbag questions that I'm actually very excited to have, some listener questions that we did want to answer on the show today. There will be more of them on 615soccer.com coming up later in the week. So please make sure you check out those mailbag questions there. But we're going to answer a few of them now. Clay, why don't you read the first one?
All right. First off, and you can't even access our mailbag unless you are a Capo member on 615 Soccer. So make sure you go join us. Join us there and get on our Discord, and you can send in questions. So this one comes from Chris, who I believe goes by CWCRTR. I'm assuming that has to do with Alabama, that last part. And he says, player confidence looks noticeably higher through these first 5 games. Decisive movement, sharper passing windows, and more risk-taking in the final third. From what you've seen or heard, is that a result of BJ giving players more tactical freedom, or is it more about clear structure and role definition boosting belief?
I really don't think this is about role structure or organization for the club as a whole. I think that's something Nashville SC already had. I don't think that's something that BJ introduced to this organization. I think there are a couple of things to look at here. First of all, is BJ's style of leadership, and second is BJ's style of on the pitch play. And I think those two are sort of the new additions. And I think there's something to be said about a new voice in the locker room, a new leader, someone to kind of change up the message, someone to provide some sort of hope for players who maybe saw their time, not being appreciated by the previous manager. And this is not a sly on Gary Smith or anything along those lines. It's just simple fact is when you are at a place for 4 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, and if you count USL even longer, then some things just become stale and some things just become another day, another routine. And here we are. When BJ Callahan comes in, I think a lot of these players are remembering, oh, shoot, I have to work for my spot here. And I think that's something that might start becoming missing from Nashville SC in the past. And we saw it at the end of the season. Brian Anunga played almost every single game under BJ Callahan. And at the end of the year, they decided he wasn't what they were looking for, and he was moved on. And Sean Davis, who didn't play as much and also was moved on. You have to earn your spot with BJ Callahan. And I think one thing BJ has done to ensure that what he's saying is not just lip service is give minutes to guys who he believed that who maybe in the past just haven't gotten those chances and opportunities. So when you say you're okay with playing younger guys, or you're okay with playing guys who just earned it, and you go out and you don't do that, then I think there's some sort of mistrust and not believing in the message, to where the opposite is happening here, where BJ Callahan says, I will play whoever plays well, and it's based on merit, and you have to prove yourself, and you go out there, prove yourself in training, you get your chance. Now as a player, you don't have an excuse. And I think that's part of that. But also tactically, I don't want to, it's not just man management, it's also tactical shift as well, to where these players are encouraged not to make mistakes, but to take risks. And those risks do cause mistakes, but that's not as big of a deal in this system as it was in previous system.
And I think it's more than just BJ. He's not the only new voice in the locker room. I would say that there was, in some ways, a void of leadership in last season's team, which can affect, confidence. Obviously, Dax McCarty wasn't on the team, but not only that, like Anibal Godoy was hurt for a good chunk of the year. You had Walker Zimmerman away either through injury or international duty. Like, you had a locker room that was in flux with the senior leadership that was within that. And so you've got now a new voice on the manager side, and now you've got new voices, kind of popping up within the locker room. I mean, Blair did an interview series with Huntsville and mentioned Yazbek as one of the leaders at Nashville SC. He just joined the club last year. And so I think that it's interesting seeing the voices that emerge and how that affects, obviously, the confidence within the team as well. And just to throw in one last thing, there was a clip that the club put out on Sunday where it was Walker Zimmerman making sure everyone remembers that when Nashville scores its first goal, they were going to do a Hani bobblehead celebration together. That is not something a team that isn't confident plans. That is a confident team saying, we're going to score, and this is what we're going to do when we score. So that's just a sign of how good they're feeling.
Yeah, and I think, it's one of the things, you don't see a lot of managers that are around for 10, 15 years anymore, because Blair's right. The message sometimes gets old. like Gary Smith is not a bad manager whatsoever, but sometimes with the same team, same people, the message gets old and you kind of need some sort of refresh. I think some of these players needed that ability, that freeing kind of refresh ability to, I mean, have fun playing the game again. And you could see it with a lot of the players that they brought in. You know, Jim Curtin, you know, literally a manager that helped build BJ Callahan, got fired at the end of the season last year. Everybody was so shocked about this. Look at Philadelphia right now, killing it, even though they can't beat us, but still killing it. So it's one of the things where it's a little bit of both. I don't think there's an easy answer for it, but I do know that that refresh did help the team. Valère, next question.
Yeah, this is from Matthew. Shout out Matthew. I want to know y'all's thoughts and insights on how Bauer played as right back in absence of Nahar. Aside from the goal, what else did y'all see?
Well, I will say that Matthew knows a little bit about the pains of trying to replace a right back, as he is a massive Evertonian. And it's just worth noting. I think that Josh Bauer is one of the best stories that Nashville SC has had over the past few years. It's kind of gone under the radar. This was not a guy who was ever really supposed to play more than a year or two at Nashville. And he has taken hold of every opportunity that he's been given and done better than a lot of people probably would have expected out of him when he first joined the league. And so I was not surprised that, you know, he slots in at right back, does a job. He does get a goal. I was a little bit surprised about him getting a goal, but it's not something that he doesn't have any ability to do. He's prone to pop up in good spots at times. So like, it wasn't totally surprising that he got a goal, but it was definitely deserved. Like, this is a dude who has grafted, who has done every possible thing that he could do to lock down a multi-year career in MLS when a lot of people in his position do not. And that is not something that anyone should look over when they talk about him. I don't think that he's ever going to be a regular starter, but he is as good as you can get from a guy who can play multiple positions on the back line for a pretty cheap rate.
And then in terms of the right back situation, I mean, I think he plays it very differently than Andy Nahar. And we asked him about that in the post-game presser. So I'd encourage you to go back and listen to his answer. But he's aware of that. He's aware that he doesn't play like Andy Nahar. And he said, I'm not trying to be like Andy. And that's okay. You want different ways of playing positions. Not everybody's going to be at the same quality, but more importantly, not everybody's going to have the same skills. So maybe he plays it a little bit more defensively. He was still going forward, but obviously, like, one of the things that Bauer gives you is height and being able to score that goal, where Andy Nahar maybe scores a different goal. So it's you know, it's a little bit more. I think his natural position is still center back, and I think I trust him more in there. And I think going forward, he'll probably play more there. But it's not a bad third option for a right back for a team to have, and, you know, third option for center back as well.
Awesome. Clay, last question.
Yeah, so I just kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago. It says, this one's from John. He says, we got to see a new bobblehead goal celebration on Saturday night. What would you rate as your top NSC goal celebration so far in our club's history?
This is a good one. I have my own personal one that I like. I want to know what both of you have. Like, I feel like there's so many that I'm just missing. I mean, I got a couple, I guess.
Go ahead.
What?
No, I want you guys to tell me. I want to know what you guys are thinking.
I think the one that most people recognize is the Johnny Cash group celebration at the Flag, with Walker singing and everyone having their role in the band. I was trying to think of some of the good USL ones, but I was usually losing my mind during the USL goal celebration. So
that's and producer Joel in the background had one
decided
of mine.
to hop in with the Big Bird, and so that's the obvious choice from the USL. But I do think that Anibal Godoy parking the bus was a fun one back in the early days of MLS.
I was trying to think of this, and honestly, I don't remember many of them. Like, I feel like there's some obvious ones that I'm just missing. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking this.
Valera, there's one that you really, really liked that I'm actually shocked that you don't remember, because I believe you asked him the question specifically about it.
Oh, yeah, the taco one from Alex Muyl?
No, that's not even the one I'm thinking about.
What are you talking about?
The turtle celebration by Teal.
Yes! Oh my god, I love the turtle celebration. Shout out to Bunbury, man. He does like this thing with his hands. It's like a turtle. And I have to ask him.
No. Please put your hands back up. What in the hell was that?
That's what he does.
No, it's literally just your two hands.
No. Oh, I don't know. It's anyway. This is great for an audio medium, but Till Bunbury, great celebration. I also, huge fan of, the salute.
What about the Tommy Rub? Alex Muyl, Tommy Rub.
Yeah, that was the taco one I was referring to, because I think I asked him about that too. I just asked about celebration, turns out.
That's good. Well, hey, thank you guys for those questions. We'll have more of those. And again, check out the 615 Soccer.
What was yours? You didn't answer yours.
I guess
this whole thing you want to hear ours, and you didn't answer yours.
Well, because they were done. So Big Bird, obviously USL Big Bird for me is going to be. I mean, the fact that when that was done in front of the Bailey in Cincinnati, it wasn't even known as the Bailey by then. Wasn't even known as the Bailey, but yeah, especially for this week as well. But then I love the turtle celebration. It's so good. But yeah, check out 615soccer.com. I'm sure there will be more mailbag questions there and things to answer. A couple other things that we do want to bring up before we do close out the episode. Woobens Pacius is getting huge props in Tampa Bay from his coach. I think Tampa Bay is one of the best teams in USL's just existence, pretty much. So the fact that he's getting praise there, I think, is something that should be talked about. Do you think we see him recalled before the end of the season?
No, I think simply what plays against him, and we talked about this to the Huntsville folks as well, because he played in Huntsville last season, but I think what plays against him is really that international slot. I really think he would be with Nashville SC if he was a domestic player. And I think, now don't quote me on this, but I think before the start of next season, he will have secured a green card or a permanent residency to where he will be able to not have to occupy an international slot. I will say the reason he went to the Tampa Bay Rowdies is because it is more challenging there. And he wanted to challenge himself, and him and his camp thought it was best for him to not spend another season MLS Next Pro, which is still a challenging league, but obviously is not as big, as good as playing against grown men in USL Championship trying to earn a living. And I think he wants to prove himself there like he did in the Canadian Premier League.
And so just to clarify on what he said, Robbie Nielsen, who's the Rowdies head coach, they won 2-1 over Miami SC, and Woobens scored in that game. And he said afterwards, if you can get Woobens in that area of the box, I think there's nobody better in the league at finishing, which is quite a compliment for a player. And I think that that is Nashville's going to need at least one striker in the offseason. So hopefully he's one of them at the end of this year. So keeping in the USL, Steven.
I don't want to talk about. Do we have to talk about this? That's fine. We can talk. Well, here's the thing. I feel like we could literally spend a whole episode on this, and we decided to throw it in at the last bit of this segment specifically. There's some news that has
big news.
Oh, it's huge news in pro US soccer. Don't like that we just threw it on at the end, but it's perfectly fine. USL has stated that they are working on a pro rel rollout for their divisions within. I thought it was crazy when the news did come out, and then I saw USL specifically tweet out like a whole answer and everything about it, where it's coming to fruition for a league in the United States to have pro rel being rolled out.
So this is where I'm going to be like, pump the brakes. Let's hold on a little bit. So the thing is USL says this is what they want to do. A super majority of the owners said this is what they want to do. A primary linchpin in this plan is that USL has Division I status for its top flight. That is a bigger roadblock than people probably realize. Now, I don't think that the current professional league standards will be held to USL if they decide to do this. They will 100% have to change the United Soccer Federation's league standards, because as of right now, of the 53 teams currently playing in professional soccer in the USL or planning to play professional soccer in the USL, 4 qualify under professional league standards. So there's no way that they would be able to get to 12 teams by 2028 and 14 after that. So 14 3 years later. So I do want to, folks are getting really, really excited about this, and it's a thing to be excited about, but this was clearly a PR move to get popular sentiment up so that they could have a better hand to play with when United States Soccer Federation talks to them about Division I standards.
And Steven, you're 100% right. I can do like 5 episodes on this. There are people within the American soccer media who are covering this and giving it the proper attention. So I do want to shout out SoccerWise, who David Goss obviously was part of this show, and they had us on their show to preview Nashville SC. So go check out SoccerWise, and David Goss and Tom Bogert did a series of interviews with USL folks and kind of to explain this move. And it's a huge thing, and I have my own thoughts, and it will take a while to go through all of them, but I will say this league, USL, they've been improving, but at the same time, they've said some things in the past that maybe didn't go well or as well as they hoped, and I think that's something to keep in mind. It would be really exciting. I'm excited to see where it goes, but we're still 3 years away, and we'll see where it goes. From now to 2028, a lot can change.
Speaking of the U.S. Soccer Federation, let's talk about another bad. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't want again national team bad. We play Cincinnati on. I think that's the important thing is that we play in Cincinnati on Saturday. That is what really matters. And Jacob Schaffelberg did get on the pitch for Canada, which I think is always cool to see. But we play Cincinnati.
I was literally about to say, and Anibal Godoy played, and then I remember, wait a minute, he doesn't play for Nashville anymore. Anibal Godoy did play for Panama, for your information, everybody. Yeah, I think Cincinnati is going to be, honestly, like a really big challenge for Nashville SC. They spent a bunch of money. They brought in Evander, they brought in Denke, 2 of the most expensive players in MLS. And you're looking at a very, very good Cincinnati team who hasn't figured it out in this season. They haven't really clicked as well as they had hoped. They had a late equalizer against them, an own goal against Atlanta at home this past weekend, 2-2 result. But all in all, I think this is going to present a really, really tough challenge for Nashville SC. Look, if you beat Cincinnati after you had already been league leaders in Philadelphia, you're starting to get into conversation Nashville SC was dreaming of getting on in the beginning of the season.
That's what I was going to say. Like everything that we said entering the Philadelphia match applies to this Cincinnati match. And like this would be like Philadelphia was saying this Nashville team is a pretty good team. It's not bad. If Nashville goes out and beats Cincinnati, it becomes this Nashville team might be able to contend for something because that's 2 of the best scalps that you can get in the Eastern Conference in Cincinnati and Philadelphia. And I do think it's worth noting that I think a lot of MLS national prognosticators are looking for a reason that Nashville SC is not a legit team. And nothing was more clear than watching MLS 360 after the Nashville game where they show it's like, well, yeah, but how bad is Montreal was the go-to thing. But if Nashville beats Philly, beats Cincinnati, and then, beats the brakes off Montreal, that's 4 wins in a row, which who knows the last time that happened. And it's also, the first real marker laid down for the season that it's going to be very hard to beat Nashville in some of these games, especially at Geodis.
Well, let's give our plugs and predictions. I'm going to go first because then I'm currently leaving literally right after I give my plug and prediction. 0-0 draw. It's going to be a 0-0 draw. 0-0 draw. 0-0 draw. Love you guys. Love you, Dax. Have a great time. Yeah, I don't know. You guys close out the show in any way you want. It's fine.
Thanks, Steven, for that. Have a good one, Steven. My prediction, I think it's hard to see this Nashville team play a 0-0 draw. I'm struggling to imagine how that would go. Watch it be a 0-0 draw. But no, I think just based on what we've seen so far, I can't see this going 0-0. I will go ahead and say it will be a draw. And I'll make it exciting, 2-2. I think it's going to be a rather open game with chances for both sides. And I just think Cincinnati has so much offensively that they are at least scoring a goal, I think, against Nashville. And I'm giving the extra one just for funsies. And then Nashville, I do think they have what it takes to also attack, and Cincinnati's defense has been questionable at best. So 2-2, I'll go a goal for Eddie Taxeth because why not, and a goal for Hani Mukhtar because he's on a roll. Yeah, that's my prediction, Clay.
Yeah, but what about your plugs?
Oh, right.
And
Follow,
I'm talking about your like social media stuff, not like your
of
hair.
course, not my electrical. What do you call them? Outlets.
Those either. I was
Yeah.
making a
No,
hair
no, no,
joke.
no, no. That's all you're talking about. Yes, at Valer Shavilla on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram. I literally do so much coverage for this Nashville SC team, but also at 615 Soccer because everybody there does a lot of coverage for Nashville SC, including Clay Trainum, of course. So make sure you're following us and make sure you support us if you can. And yeah, for me personally, look for the bald guy with a beard and follow that account.
Now, as for me, you can follow me at Clay Lasol on Twitter and Instagram if you so please. You'll hear a lot about Jesuit school basketball on there sometimes, but for the most part, I'm going to be talking about Everton and talking about Nashville SC. I was leaning towards draw, but then both Valer and Steven didn't show the backbone that I normally expect, especially from Steven. So we're going to win, man.
There
We're
you
going to
go.
win. Nashville typically does well. Again, different coaching staff, but Nashville has typically done well against Cincinnati over the years. Certainly more so than they should have, based on years where Cincinnati on paper was better than Nashville. And so I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a good time. I'm going to go 2-1 win for Nashville. Nashville scores early. Cincinnati levels it. Nashville scores in the 80th minute through a Hani Mukhtar penalty, a controversial Hani Mukhtar penalty, and then holds on for dear life the last few minutes of the game for a 2-1 win. And I'm also predicting that because I will not be at the game. And so I'm very, very annoyed. This is the first time I think I've ever missed a Nashville Cincy game. So a little bit annoyed about that, but it is what it is. And so we shall see what happens there.
I was just gonna say, wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Thanks. We hope that you enjoyed our interview with Dax this week. We hope to have more things like that in the future. I'm sure it went great. He talked so much about things, and they were really interesting, and we can't wait to discuss these things later. And maybe we'll discuss them next week right here on Pharma Soccer. Thanks for listening.